So welcome to the webinar on implementation of the PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana for residential sector. As you are aware, Government of India has launched the PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana with the aim of installing rooftop solar plants in about 1 crore households. Administrative approval for the scheme with financial outlay of about 75,000 crores, which includes central financial assistance of about 67,000 crores, 65,000 crores for residential sector has been granted. Draft guidelines for its implementation have already been issued for getting the inputs from the stakeholders. I already circulated a background note of the subject to the participants, and I'm going to repeat the contents of the same. I only want to say that though the total installed capacity target under this scheme is only 30,000 megawatt, the canvas is too large. The capacity is distributed over the length and breadth of the country, across the country, in about 1 crore households, and that makes the implementation challenging. Besides financially benefiting the consumer, it will involve the common consumer in the national program and make them aware, involve them in the national program to reduce greenhouse gas emission. And it will give them a sense of pride that they are also participating in a national program to reduce the carbon footprint of the country. I would like to introduce the distinguished speakers of today. Mr. Alok Kumar, former Secretary of the Ministry of Power, and recently taken over as Director, Lantau consulting firm in the energy sector. Other panelists are Mrs. Vali Natarajan, Executive Director, Technical. The REC is the National Program Implementation Agency, and we'll hear from her about the salient features of the program, challenges in its implementation, and how REC is equipping itself as a coordinating agency to facilitate the implementation and to meet the challenges. You also have Mr. Balwant, founder and MD, IDEM Infrastructure Advisory Limited. He has been a known personality and been working in the RE sector for more than 20 years. I have received some queries to the panelists. But for the benefit of the participants, I am just stating these some of the queries. So, one of the concern raised is that the high-end consumers may also get the benefit of the CFA. Though there is an option to opt out, the subsidy is voluntary. This option is voluntary. The installations of only rooftops, terrace, balcony, and elevated structures are eligible under the scheme. But in small towns and rural areas, ground-mounted solar panels can be installed at much lower cost. And concern has been raised about the timely release of the CFA to consumers, because after installation, the solar plant, they have to get a certification from the DISCOM and sign an agreement. It may take time. So how it is to be ensured that the consumer gets the CFA the shortest time after the installation is complete, and how the quality and the maintenance of the solar in 1 crore household is going to be ensured. Concern is also raised about the availability of the domestic panels. Domestically manufactured panels are eligible under the scheme. Now, there is also a concern that under the right to consumer rules, the TOD scheme is to be introduced, and in the solar hours, the DISCOM tariff, the retail supply tariff, 40% lower than the normal average tariff. And so the energy injected by the consumers will be sold by the distribution to other consumers at lower price. And at the same time, they will have to arrange energy for the peak hours, expensive energy for the peak hours. Concerns have all been raised about the disposal of the solar panels after their completion of their useful life. when they are spread over across the country in 1 crore household. Then there are also legal questions about the third party developing the solar plant, which is permissible under the scheme. And legally, cross subsidy surcharge is to be levied on the energy drawn by the consumer. So how that legal obstacle is going to be tackled. I'll now request Mr. R.V. Shai, President IEF, to say a few words about the subject.
Thank you, Rakesh. Let me, on behalf of the India Energy Forum, welcome our distinguished speakers, particularly Mr. Alok Kumar, former Power Secretary, who agreed to be the chief guest today. We have Mr. Ajay Shankar also participating. All these stalwarts have been part of the process of power sector reform for several years. Very control. And I'm happy that both of them, we were together when we were working for 5 years during 2002 to 2007 in the ministry. And I remember in the ministry we worked out 1 year after my joining, we worked out a scheme, electrification of 1 lakh villages and 1 crore household with substantial grant funding from the government. And even that was not very attractive for the energy secretaries to come back and say that even that is not affordable insofar as state governments are concerned. And that gave rise to subsequently under the UPA dispensation, the comprehensive rural electrification program, where 90% grant funding was provided for rural electrification. But as regards rooftop solar, this is not new. And I was again very closely associated from the World Bank side when the rooftop solar scheme was being talked somewhere in 2015. A general rooftop solar scheme.
I was recording too.
Where the World Bank was trying to support through State Bank of India the funding of rooftop solar scheme. I think over last about 10 years, a little less than 10 years, we have substantial experience of working with the rooftop solar. The concept of net metering, the concept of distribution companies, staff being fully acquainted with this. And I remember having conducted workshops and discussions with regulatory groups, with RISCOs, the aggregators, with consumer groups, with people who were representing the rural households and urban households particularly. And a lot of suggestions came. And a few years down the line, the feedback was that the system has yet to stabilize in terms of level of confidence of people, whether this net metering concept is really working. I mean, many of the people believed that how much power is being produced from the solar system, how much is being consumed in the premises, and how much is coming from the DISCOM side. There is some degree of confusion and lack of clarity. As much as that, I myself set up a 40 kilowatt in the office that I work with in Noida. And then even today, many of these issues continue to be mystery. So therefore, learning, awareness, full confidence, full commitment of DISCOM in these matters is very important. It's not that I'm making a point that it is generally lacking, but it requires a good degree of, and maybe I'm not also saying because of some ulterior motives, it does require a lot of understanding, training, and a sense of cooperation and commitment that should come. One of the things that people felt that whether the DISCOMs have taken it very sportingly, because obviously the DISCOMs business reduces, the private sector business or public sector business reduces because rooftop solar produces power. To that extent, their own consumption reduces. So that degree of understanding and that degree of commitment, and even beyond that, a good level of learning and acquiring the skills to deal with commercial issues and technical issues of maintenance issues is very important. Now that this is being scaled down to a figure of some 2 kilowatt and 3 kilowatt, and obviously the idea is for a section of society remains not as privileged as many others, and therefore we want to see that they are helped in a big way, significant way. The spirit is excellent, and this is a welcome initiative. Much will depend on what happens during implementation. One of the important features of this scheme is that it promotes domestic manufacturing, because the grant funding under the scheme for procurement of the system is available only for the domestic manufacturers. That is very much needed. India embarked upon a massive program of expansion of solar, but we continue to depend heavily on the import. And it really needed production linked incentive scheme is there, but compared with the size of expansion that we want to do on this solar system in the country, and I'm not talking of only rooftop solar, the domestic manufacturing support has to go beyond. Some of the organizations have come up, they are doing their best. More will come up. Then this scheme also will make its contribution toward promoting and sort of facilitating domestic manufacturing in a big way. Sure, Ministry of Power over the years would have got the experience of working with rooftop solar scheme, because as I said, this scheme is not new. But a general point is that rural India now, because I myself come from India, only recently, last month I was in my village. Every year I go at least twice. And therefore the aspirations of rural India is now much beyond this too. And rural economy also has to develop. So therefore, I have written 2 pieces on the subject that, and then we had provided a very wonderful provision in the rural electrification scheme of the country under the Electricity Act 2003, that if somebody wants to set up decentralized distributed generation system, which will include the renewable, 1 megawatt and below, he does not need any approval. It is delicensed, generation is delicensed, distribution is delicensed. Unfortunately, that scheme was not facilitated to pick up in a significant way. Those days I was selling the scheme that we want Hindustan levers in rural India, that rural economy develops. So while we should promote and we should welcome this scheme side by side, we should sidetrack the issue of rural economy development, and it is there where decentralized solar system in the range of 2 megawatt, 3 megawatt, 4 megawatt in different areas, which should help not only irrigation, but it should also help in rural economy to develop by small scale industry and other industries, because aspirations of rural India today is entirely different. Therefore, while this scheme is great, and it focuses on certain segment of our society, a society that needs certain special attention. At the same time, we should not be oblivious that the experiences that we have gained on the RTS earlier must be brought to bear on implementational aspects of this scheme. And cooperation of DISCOM and DISCOM staff will be a significant factor. I mean, somehow we see in every solution that we make is part of role of DISCOM. I'm not critical of DISCOM. I am proud of the engineers who are working in DISCOMs, but I get scared when their involvement in a significant way comes in any scheme. And scheme after scheme, we have been helping, and rural electricity supply is not supported in a significant way in many states, or maybe in most states. Very many states have done very well. So therefore, their cooperation will be important, their learning will be important, their commitment will be important. The RESCO model, we should revisit some of the experiences and see how best they also contribute into this. So I think we will like to listen to many of the speakers. Alok Kumar will be giving the inaugural keynote address. And there are others, I think. I see a large number of distinguished individuals in the participants list today. And definitely it will go a long way, and we will put together some of the conclusions, important conclusions that emerge, and forward to the Ministry of Power and Ministry of Renewable Energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. With the consent of Mr. Alok Kumar, there is some slight change in the order of the speakers. Mrs. Natarajan will give a short presentation of the scheme before Mr. Alok Kumar speaks. So I'll request Mrs. Valli Natarajan.
Good morning, sir. Sir, I'm really sorry about the slight change, sir, and I'm really privileged to be here. When I see the names of the people here, I remember when I entered this power sector, started my career, all these names were like sort of spoken in awe, how they are in the ministry, CEA, and various sectors. And particularly Alok Kumar, sir, I'm very, very grateful because I worked under him for the implementation of RDSs. And for the 2 years we worked under him, I think that was a period when my career, I just thought how much I've learned from his vast experience and his guidance. Of course, we were all used to be very, very scared about him because he used to, run the policy, but most part of the RDS's success, I think it should be attributed to him, sir. Thank you very much, sir. And I'm very sorry about this change, sir. 11 o'clock, there was a secretary meeting, so I just thought I'll make this presentation first so that we can have a concrete discussion later on. And thank you for accommodating this. Sir, it's a very, very small presentation. Nothing new which none of you are not aware of. So I'll just go through it very shortly so that I can set the stage for today's discussions and what are the developments which has recently happened in the MNRE on the scheme. And being REC being the implementing agency, there are a lot of challenges. I don't think we have answers to many of the challenges also. Implementation challenges have been listed out, but we are trying to overcome them. Next slide, please. Can we have the next slide? Yeah. So this, I'm not going to dwell much on this. All of you know about this. There are various components of the scheme for which guidelines are yet to come. Only for the subsidy portion now that we have formulated, even then the draft guidelines have been circulated, not the final guidelines. Regarding the other components of incentives to local bodies and model solar villages, capacity building and payment security, we are still evolving the scheme. Even the draft has not come out. And recently a draft has been circulated for saturation of the government buildings with rooftop solar, which is a very, very major challenge. Rather, even before the launch of the scheme, saturation of government buildings was a directive given by our Honorable Prime Minister to all the ministries of central and state governments. And for the last 1 year, MNRE has allotted a few CPSUs to do the saturation. And but still, we are yet to have a breakthrough in this so far. We have not started. It may be individually the buildings, like for instance, our REC headquarters and corporate office program has a 1 megawatt capacity rooftop solar. But as a country, as a policy, we have still not evolved or started this work of saturating our government buildings. Next. So this is a brief numbers. So far, after the launch of the scheme, we have received around 1.24 crore registrations on the portal, of which only 8.3 lakh has been converted into proper applications. So the registration is a very, very preliminary one where they just express their interest to get into the scheme. But the application is the one where they give details of their consumer number, their place, residence, rooftops, what is the capacity they would like to install, and it gets submitted. And from this is where the actual process starts. So far, out of this 1.24 crore, only 8.3 applications have been totally submitted in the portal. And out of this, there are around 60, today we have around 60K installations from these applications. So this is the numbers which we are talking, where we are targeting a installation of 1 crore households in the next 2 years. We are only now at 60K installations and with only 8.3 lakh applications. And you can imagine the scale of the problems or challenges which we are facing in converting these registrations to applications and then to installations. Now, when the program was launched around 2-3 months back by the Honorable Prime Minister, we did not have an online portal which was capable of handling such a huge number. And very quickly, MNRE and REC worked together. And now we have put in place an advanced portal which can handle such huge numbers. And still there are some problems, but it is all settling down. So with the launch of this portal, we feel that we can carry forward and have all the stakeholders on the same platform and sort out the issues. And number two is the integration with the Jan Samarth portal. So this is one thing which has been introduced, which Government of India is very, very particular on. Key loan sanction should be on the Jan Samarth portal. And so straight from the REC, MNRE portal for rooftop, the consumers, if they are interested in the loans, they can click it and go to the Jan Samarth portal. They don't have to do any more logins there. And already 15 nationalized banks have been enlisted in the Jan Samarth portal. And they have been asked to give up to 3 kilowatts. They have been asked to give collateral-free loan up to 90% of the cost at 7% interest rate. So it's just an online process, and the consumer has to just give his PAN and Aadhaar as a proof, a KYC document, and the loan is sanctioned. So this is the ease with which the loan is going to be sanctioned. And then for vendor registration also, we have now just opened out a national vendor registration recently last week. Apart from the states, vendors have been enlisted only by the states so far. And now national registration has also been opened out. So people who are desirous of working in more than a state, they can go for the national vendor registration and do it. Many of our CPSUs are interested in doing this. And many of the bigger vendors like Tata's and Adani and Reliance and they have shown their interest. Bari, who are module manufacturers, OEM, who are also keen on supplying their materials, they have shown interest in registering as a national vendor because they have the capacity to work in many states, whereas smaller vendors in individual states who are mostly MSMEs would like to confine themselves to their own space. And the call center has been launched 2 months back with a short code, and it has got a tremendous response. And the BSNL is running this call center, and they are able to attend to the queries of the consumers, and where they are not able to answer, they record it and pass it on to either REC or MNRE, and they get back to the consumers the next day with a callback facility to explain this. Next. And this IEC activities definitely, so that's going to help, but because of the election code of conduct that has been stopped right now. So once June first week, say, I think it should open up and help us in doing the installation and marketing of this. So as I said, sir, it's a single stop. This portal is a single stop solution right from registration and application. Loan submission application also can be done in the same portal. TFR approval, of course, this TFR approval based on the guidance of Ministry of Power, it is being waived off for up to 10 kilowatts. Many of the DISCOMs have followed Ministry's Government of India's directives and done the TFR waiver, but there are many states and DISCOMs which are yet to do this. We have around 20 DISCOMs which have already done this, and others we are following them. So we feel that if the TFR approval is waived off, because this was the main bottleneck there, the DISCOMs were taking around 15, 20 or even a month to approve the TFRs. So it was felt that up to 3 kilowatt, up to 10 kilowatt, this should be waived off. And more than 10 kilowatt, 15 days timeline has been given by the ministry. Then once the TFR is approved or whatever application is submitted, then it is up to the consumer. Now the consumer has to talk to the vendor. This scheme is designed so that it's totally consumer centric. The consumer has to talk to the vendors. Enlisted vendors are given in the site, in the portal. They need to talk to them and do the vendor identification. And then the vendor and consumer agree on a price and they do the installation. Once the installation is done, then the project completion report is submitted by the consumer, from where the DISCOM role starts. Then the DISCOM will come for inspection, net metering. This is another major challenge there. Net metering, they have to come and install. They have to install the premises for all the safety and installation things. And once they are satisfied with the installation, and once the meter is installed and tested, then the DISCOM submits the DISCOM report, completion report on the portal, after which only the consumer becomes eligible for subsidy. So this is the gap where we have a lot of challenges and we have a lot of issues to be addressed. Once the subsidy is submitted, now we are having a lot of complaints about subsidy delay, but you are all aware that it is all due to the election code of conduct where the subsidy release has been stopped by the government. So once May end or June 1st comes, then all the pending subsidies will be released, and we are going to ensure that subsidy release should not take much time after the DISCOM gives the completion report. And we also have a grievance redressal portal in the portal, and vendor registration and vendor login is also available in the same portal. Next. So these are the supports which Government of India has given us. They have mandated that TFR should be waived off up to 10 kilowatt, and for more than 10 kilowatt, it should not take more than 15 days to give the TFR approval. And wherever distribution system strengthening is necessary for up to 5 kilowatt capacity should be done by the DISCOMs at their own cost. And they should not take more than 15 days After the consumer says my installation is complete, for putting the meters and giving their distribution final report, 15 days is a timeline which has been given. And to do all these things, what ministry has told us is that an MOU, supplementary MOU would be signed with the states in the lines of RDSs, that until and unless all this is agreed upon and the DISCOM sign the MOU, we would be having certain hindrances by way of approving their RDSS evaluation and all those things. So this is under process now. So we hope that once they sign the MOU, then that would also come in line. Next. Next slide, please. These are the stakeholders, sir. I don't think I need to dwell on this much to you people. Next. So these main implementation challenges. So consumer awareness. That, sir, we hope that once we start the IEC activities in full flow after the election is over, we would be able to do a lot of improvements. Even for the short period of 15 days when the Prime Minister launched the program and before the model code of conduct kicked in, we could do a lot of radio jingles and TV commercials and advertisements. And we found that at that time, the submission of applications and registrations were increasing. And then when the model code of conduct came, we had to stop it. And now once it is over, now we will start going into the tier 1, tier 2 cities where we think that the potential is more. Because in the cities, it's mostly multi-story apartments. Many of them are not having a proper rooftop. Of course, there are, but tier 2 cities where there is a scope, the awareness has to be created. Certain states may already the awareness is there. Looking at the number of applications and registrations being received, like Gujarat, Kerala, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and Maharashtra, there was no need for us. We should, of course, do our IEC activities, but to make it more widespread, this would start. And then next is the availability of the vendors. This also is a very, very important thing for us. We are going around to different states and talking to the vendors. So the vendors come mainly the flow of funds. Here in this case, we are very clear our subsidy would go only after the installation is complete. So initially when the consumer ties up with the vendor, and the name of the scheme has also been announced as a Muft Bijli Yojana. They are with the intention that once a solar rooftop is installed, then whatever you are going to generate is going to cut down your solar bills up to 3 kilowatt. If you go 300 units, then you can be generating and it will be a free. But generally, our consumers are used to asking, why should I put my money upfront when it is called a Muft Bijli Yojana? So making them understand that it's not a like installation, you just need to have a 2-month period where you would be putting your own money or availing a loan and putting. And after the 2-month gap, when you install, then the subsidy would flow in. This is a major challenge. So here, neither the vendors nor the consumers are willing to put in that much money. And generally, a 1 kilowatt cost, even if the benchmark cost is mentioned as 50,000, with these stipulations of DCR, cells, modules, and the module price slightly going up, and interiors, the location of working, 50,000 is a very, very ideal figure. So it costs anywhere between, especially if it is going to be a 1 kilowatt or 2 kilowatt system. The higher the scaling, then it comes down. But for 1 and 2 and 3 kilowatt, it is going to cost anywhere between 670 to 80,000. This is the actual price which we feel in the market. So there, the consumers and the vendors are wanting. Consumers especially, they are wanting something upfront. Vendors especially, that without some upfront money, they are not willing to put in their money or help the consumers to install. There are movements, many of them are doing it, but smaller vendors, it is fine. They are finding it very, very difficult. So we are trying to work out with the banks if something can be given upfront to the vendors if the loan is availed. So that banks are not very comfortable because already it's a collateral free loan at 7%, and many of them feel that it is a very, very risky proposition for them. And giving the money to the vendor upfront without the installation, without the materials coming, because the vendors are seeking some mobilization advance for mobilization of the materials. So this where MNRE and DFS are trying to interact with the bankers and the vendors, bridging that gap and trying to see what best we can do to facilitate some availability of resources for them. And second is, even if the number of vendors are there, we have very, very less trained installation groups. When we spoke with all the vendors, each of them are working with just 2 or 3 installation groups. And installation groups, installers means it's only 1 or 2 people. That's all. And so like it's very, very difficult for them to complete the installation process in interiors of the states where they have to move, take the material and men and take all the, install the things. So that is also leading to a problem. So again, ministry has a scheme for
అందులో పెట్టిన డబ్బులు ఇవ్వడు బిగ్ బాస్కెట్ వాడు రాస్తే అయినా 77కి 14, 3, 27 కాయలు వచ్చాయి 77/27
27 కాయలు వచ్చాయి కాయ 3 రూపాయలకే పడలేదు
తర్వాత అవి ఇంత లేవు విశాఖపట్నంలో హైదరాబాద్ లో చాలా పెద్ద చాలాగా
అలాగే బజరగా ఉన్నాయి
బాగున్నాయి చాలా
3 రూపాయలు కూడా పడలేదంటే ఇంకా తక్కువ.
Please unmute, Mr. Rao.
There is some cross-talk going on.
Sir, regarding the skilled processing, there again we have some money in the overall scheme of things. We have some fund allocated for that. So we are coordinating with some of the institutes like NPTI or Skill Development Council or like other institutes where we are planning to take up the training of these installers. So that hopefully, sir, next month it will kick in. And so once that is done, this is another request of the vendors that they should be made available skilled manpower. So ITIs would be roped in and all those diploma graduates, electrical and mechanical engineers would be trained and a certification would be given that they have been trained under this program and it will be supplied to the vendors. So at least they will not face a shortage of manpower.
I'm just raising one question for the REC director who is making a presentation on the rooftop solar systems. I want to know any of the discoms in Delhi, for example, the Tata company in Delhi or BLCSE. Is there any examples of the consumers who have really gained from this very system of setting up rooftop solar? Because I have some information that some of them are doing very well and they are quite excited about it. But have you collected any such pool of the consumers, at least in Delhi or some other state, and that will be useful to at least share with the participants if possible? My name is V.S. Salavadi, former chairman HERC.
So actually,
Can we take the question answers later? Mr. Natarajan, could you please
Kindly
conclude?
note down my question.
Yeah.
right.
Mrs. Natarajan, could you please conclude?
Yeah, yes. So this is about the vendors and installers. So then comes this net meters availability. This is really a major challenge. Not only the availability of net meters, there are various policies of different discoms. Like for instance, yesterday we were in Assam talking to the vendors. There they still don't have a net metering system. They just have the net billing system. They call it as exim meters or whatever they want to call it, where the input and output is measured, but it is not set off. So basically net metering, the input and output is set off and whatever excess is pumped into the grid, many states pay the consumers, many of the states do not pay for them, but at least it is set off and they are charged only for the excess which is drawn by them apart from what is generated. Whereas in Assam, they have a net billing. So they have a separate meter which measures what is being drawn and what is being sold. And what is being sold, they get like a very, very lesser amount, and what is being drawn, it's a more amount, and there is no setting off also. So this is where, sir, if you see the figures of my applications and registrations, Assam stands second next only to Gujarat in terms of applications and registrations. But the progress is very, very dismal. Nothing has converted. So like we were discussing what could be the issue. And then the vendors have told that they themselves are not interested to expand their base in Assam because of this non-availability of net metering policy. So, and you look at various discoms, whatever is set off and set, some of them, Tamil Nadu does not pay them for any money, which is any unit which is being generated into the grid. Some of them say that we'll pay them at APPC price, but that is a very, very dynamic this thing. And everything is set off at the end of the financial year. So these varying policies will actually, like if some uniformity can be brought, but I know it's a very difficult thing in our power setup where it's a concurrent subject and we can't, like drive the discoms much.
Yes, Natarajan, could you please conclude?
Yes, sir. I'm taking it. Okay. I think net meters is one issue. Then again, I said outreach program. Subsidies by the state government is one more thing. Some of them have given subsidies, some of them have not given subsidies. Cheap products. Next slide. Next slide, please. Skilled manpower, I've already touched upon, sir. Timely release of subsidy is going to be a challenge, sir, because here, after the elections, even if we have the subsidy with us, discoms are taking at least 2 months from installation to giving their completion report. So that time period, we do not know how we are going to overcome this challenge. And discoms are reluctant about this rooftop solar. Many of them have their own misgivings. They are still not very clear whether it's going to be beneficial for them or not. And availability of DCR modules, cell capacity. That is a major challenge. We are not very sure whether 5 gigawatt cell capacity, which we have now, is going to be sufficient to meet this target of 30 gigawatts or 3 crore households. And this is one thing where Government of India also has to have the policy. And pricing of solar modules. Now with this demand going up, they all have increased their domestic content modules prices. This is the complaint which vendors are giving, sir. So this is what I have to say. And
Thank you. Thank you,
thank
Ms.
you so
Nagar.
much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much
sir.
for listing out the challenges and what REC is doing to meet these challenges. May I now request Mr. Alok Kumar to say his presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, please, you are audible.
Okay, thank you very much. I must thank India Energy Forum for giving me this opportunity, and the people who are attending this seminar are all very senior and experienced people. And my job has been made much easy by the REC presentation. Most of the issues have been flagged. What I will try to do in the next 10-15 minutes is give you my perspective and also discuss the relative importance of the issues which are going to impinge on the implementation. Let us spend some minute on the international perspective. World over, the share of rooftop or distributed solar in total solar is around 40%. India has only 15% of the rooftop share. So we have to cover a long way. If we see at China, their CAGR in the last 5 years for rooftop growth was 38%, and they have 254 gigawatt of rooftop solar in the total solar of 609 gigawatt. In Korea, they have even allowed any rooftop of 1 megawatt and above to participate in their wholesale market also. Australia is another country which has ramped up its rooftop capacity from 3.2 gigawatt in 2013 to 34 gigawatt. Comparatively, it's a smaller country population-wise, but they have done wonderfully well. In Taiwan, 63% of solar comes from rooftop, whereas they also have multi-storied. So it is not so that in multi-storied buildings you can have some arrangements where. So there are a lot of learnings around that how the rooftop is being promoted. And going by the international experience, there is one broad conclusion that rooftop is an important intervention, and India should do everything to make it succeed. Now, coming to India, why should we promote rooftop solar? The perspective is different for Government of India, for a state government, and for a consumer. The Government of India is promoting rooftop solar to fulfill its nationally determined contributions for job creation, for promoting local manufacturing, for wider dispersal of the gains of the rooftop solar distributed, for taking care of energy security, because we are pushing electric vehicles and electric cooking and green hydrogen. We need more of renewable energy to replace the oil imports. And also, we also want to control the expenditure on transmission lines being built for large solar parks. So there are several benefits from national perspective. If we move to state or utility perspective, which is quite similar, and I note that this MOU with every state is essential. So what could be the considerations for a state when they take up this Government of India scheme? There are two major things from a state perspective. The most important thing is going to be the impact on the retail tariffs of power. Every state has a different perspective. So if a state has to meet its RPO, there are states in the country who can meet easily with hydropower. They will have little incentive to have push solar, and which may be costlier for their overall purchase cost of power. There may be states sitting near a coal pit head where the variable cost of coal generation is much less than the power generated from solar rooftop. They may have different perspective for entering into this scheme. And there are states like Gujarat and Punjab where transportation of coal is very high and the variable cost is very high. They will be, of course, the forefront. The picture will be quite different for different states and UTs. You will not have its uniform implementation. Every state will have one common incentive is job creation, because solar rooftop installation will create a lot of jobs, and also some incentive for local manufacturing. If we come to consumer perspective, consumer will have only two considerations. First is what are going to be his financial gains from this scheme, and what is the ease of getting benefits from government and the certainty of those benefits. I will come to the part of certainty in a while. So with this perspective, let me share with you my thinking about what are the positives about this scheme. This scheme is positive because it links free power to capital subsidy instead of the tariff subsidy. So in my view, this is a correct approach to help consumers in giving capex subsidy for purchasing equipments, which can bring down the cost of power in the long run, than giving tariff subsidy, because giving capex subsidy also helps in energy efficiency, energy conservation. It's a better economic incentive. Second positive thing is it has abolished the subsidy for the commercial and industrial consumers. It was not required at all. It was perverse incentive. Third good thing is that it emphasizes local manufacturing, because demand visibility is important for pushing local manufacturing. So the condition of local cells is an ideal thing, because India wants to push local manufacturing for energy security. And fourth most important thing is that it puts rooftop solar in a mission approach. If you see the draft guidelines, there is a provision of mission director. So for the first time, there will be much better administrative focus to push the scheme. Wali has spoken about a lot of challenges. Let me put my perspective about what is the importance of these factors, which are going to be more important than the others. The one most important thing is the consumer confidence. You may do whatever you do in IEC. Consumer will judge your experience by the actual experience of the consumers. He will form his opinion. I know whenever there is no election, even then subsidy has been delayed by 2 years in the past. So consumers in general have quite a bitter memory about this disbursal of subsidy, how your Ministry of Finance will sanction the budget, how the REC will get the budget, how the DISCOM will happen, DISCOM will function or the act, and what is the DISCOM interface, and also the uncertainty about the quality of the panels after 5 years. You are talking of only a 5-year, say, free maintenance and warranty. So these are the things which consumer will weigh before he picks up your scheme. Otherwise, there will be always a gap between your applications and registrations. Second important thing, most important thing for the success of this scheme will be the incentive structure for consumer. You are having a free power in almost in all large states. Odisha has announced in these elections 100 units free. So how will this interplay the incentives between free power and your cost of generation, which to my computation is going to be something around 1.5 rupees to 2 rupees. If you factor into subsidy, the cost of generation will be still 2 rupees. So consumer will weigh, why should he take a trouble to enter into a loan agreement and get into a liability to pay a loan and give his papers and all while he is enjoying free power. So my sense is the scheme will flow to comparatively larger households who will be preferred by lenders also, and who will also take this trouble to get into loan and see at the long-term benefit. A smaller households, my senses will still prefer to enjoy free power and not take this burden of the say 40% loan or whatever it is. One more thing, the small household will always weigh the difference between the cost of generation and the tariff which is set by SERC for paying to him, because he will not like to relinquish his right for 300 unit or 200 unit of free power. He will see what is a gap, say for the sale of power beyond free consumption to Discom, like he consumes 200 units of free power and his 3 kilowatt generates say 350 units per month. He will compute that my cost of generation for paying the EMI all will be around 2 rupees and Discom pays me 4 rupees. So I'll gain 2 rupees per unit for the sale of power. That will drive him to take loan or not to take loan or to go forward. So the most critical thing will be the approach of lenders for the credibility of the borrower and the rate fixed by the SERC. Let me straight come to the the regulatory role, which is, you have not spoken much, is going to be critical. There are two most important factors. One is what is the rate which will be given by the SERC for power being sold to the rooftop owner or the household. My sense is a smaller household will prefer gross metering, don't run after net metering alone. So they will like to enjoy free power and sell the whole power and earn the money. So the rate which SERC will fix, they will have to take into account the impact on the overall purchase of the say overall power purchase cost of the utility. What are the cheaper ways of meeting their RPOs otherwise, like local wind or local hydro? Maybe what are their standard cost? Something like UP has built a lot of power stations. They have a lot of fixed costs, and their pithead stations will generate power at less than 2 rupees. So they may be not forthcoming to give a very high rate for sale of solar power to the consumer. So in nutshell, the regulator will have to weigh that rate is fixed in a manner which is sufficiently incentivizing for the consumer, but at the same time doesn't add significantly to the burden of the power purchase cost. It will vary across the state depending on various factors. Integration of renewable energy, your flexible resources, your vicinity to the pithead stations and all will depend. Second important thing is the visibility of this rate. You are going to take loan and make an investment for 15 years, at least 15. The lender will also see. SERCs have been changing this rate year to year. It is not going to work. In Taiwan, you have a PPA for 20 years with Discom on a given rate. They have a rate visibility for 10 years at least. So SERCs will have to grandfather that if I make an investment rooftop in this year, I will be paid that rate of this year for next 10 years or 15 years. If you don't do that, this will bring uncertainty in the investment repayment capability of the system. Third important thing with SERC will have to do is they will have to figure out how the prepaid system will have to figure with the net metering, because whatever you are selling, that will have to say feed into your recharge right, not to the end of the year. It has to be every month. You can't do that settlement at the end of the year. You have to pay the consumer at the end of the month. Otherwise, with prepaid metering, it is not going to work. Fourth important thing for the regulator is design of the time of the tariff. You have to do very fine balancing. The impact on the rate of power which you will pay to the rooftop owner and time of day tariff in the larger scheme to push the load from peak to off peak. So that will need a lot of load research and a lot of proper design of time of day tariff. These are the four critical roles for the regulators. The supply chains, Wali has already spoken on domestic sales, and it is important. My sense is in supply chains and in our capability is the teams on the ground. I have seen in two schemes, the Saubhagya scheme, when the larger players came, they got stuck with the lack of the team on the ground. They will have to have local partners, local sufficient team for the installations and maintenance. And second scheme was the smart metering. You can get bigger players, but for installing smart meters and for addressing the consumer grievances, you need a lot of teams. So it is the pace of a scheme will also depend on how fast we can ramp up the number of qualified teams on the ground. I'll say that DISCOM is not being spoken much in this scheme. DISCOM will also have a lot of challenges. With the solar rooftop coming in a concentrated manner in the tier 2 towns or tier 1 towns, whatever it is, DISCOM will be faced with the difficulties in network expansion because the rules say up to 5 kilowatt DISCOM will have to expand on their own cost. They will have to mobilize capital. And assessing that rooftop is coming, you have to expand. There is a lead time for expansion. They have to do a load research also for their grid management and for the power impact on the power procurement. So capacity building and giving them software tools for modeling the impact on their power purchase costs for the network expansion is another challenge, which I don't see in the presentation of REC, which they have to take care of. One thing which Rakesh Nathji also mentioned is this confusion of the payment of cross-subsidy surcharge by the RESCO model. To my mind, it is a non-issue. It has been for the last 5-10 years, all the collectorates have been done through RESCO model and nobody has raised this issue. It's a non-issue. If required, we can make a new rule, amendment in the rule. We should not say for RESCO model, for rooftop solar, you're going to do a cross-subsidy surcharge. It is an extremely legalistic view. It will not work. We will have to amend the rules if required. But in the field, it has been going on for several years, and there has been no demand for payment of cross-subsidy surcharge. There are some super hyperactive people in the WhatsApp group who have brought this issue. It is not an issue. It can be addressed. It must be addressed. Before I conclude, I will say the scheme implementation will depend critically on the role of the state regulatory commission, on the type of tariff and the cost they are going to pay with the visibility, and also with the visibility of 15 years for the grandfathering, and also permitting also liberally this gross metering for smaller households. That is an important thing. Let us not blindfolded push only net metering. It is not going to work. A smaller household will like to enjoy free power and get earning through cross metering. Second role is lender's role. Wali also spoke about the reluctance of the lenders, which is going to be there. Lenders will not like to give a loan to smaller households. It will be far more difficult. So we'll have to work with lenders. Lenders will like to go naturally to the larger households for the better credit score. So that is one of the second important stakeholder. And third important stakeholder I'm going to is cell manufacturer. If they don't ramp up this local cell manufacturing capacity, the scheme will not take off properly. So the scheme has many challenges. This scheme is very good. It has very good features. But unless until the three key actors, the regulatory commissions and the state, the lenders and the local manufacturers, they come on board, and the conduct of the REC in paying subsidy timely, whatever they have to do with the Ministry of Finance, it is going to decide the fate of this scheme. I had that perspective in mind. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alokji, with explaining everything with so much clarity and giving your suggestions, very, very valuable suggestions for the implementation. Thank you so much for your time, and your thoughts are really very valuable to us. Thank you. May I now request Mr. Balwant Joshi to give his presentation.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Rakesh Nath sir. Thank you, Alok Nath sir, Alok Kumar ji, Ashahi sir, and India Energy Forum for giving me this particular opportunity. It's always a big challenge to speak on the challenges after so many luminaries have spoken on the subject. Incidentally, I had a benefit of having a look at Valli Madam's presentation. So in my presentation, I have tried to avoid the issues which she has already taken up, or try to provide a different perspective on those issues. I have a very short presentation, 6-7 slides, wherein I would talk about some of the issues and what impact those issues have in terms of the implementation of this particular scheme. Is my presentation visible? Krishna sir?
Yeah, it is visible.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, it is visible.
So already this has been spoken about in terms of the objective of the scheme. Just one particular objective, that is a 720 million tons of CO2 equivalent reduction, is something very crucial. 30 gigawatt of capacity addition, which would contribute to the 500 gigawatt of total target for 2030. It's crucial as far as this particular scheme is concerned. Financial outlay we have already discussed. I will straight away come to the implementation challenges. Valli Madam talked about the efforts being taken by MNRE as well as REC and MOP to create a vendor base. Frankly, from my point of view, I don't see a challenge in terms of creating a vendor base. MNRE had launched a scheme about the registration of the vendors a few years back, 2017, 2018, and we had already close to 4,000 vendors across the country who were registered at that point of time. The challenge is going to be, how do you really look at these vendors and how do you really ensure the quality management? So maintaining the quality of RTS system is going to be a bigger challenge, and uncertainty of existence of the small EPC players. See, we are talking about having the 5 years of O&M being taken care by these EPC players, and these EPC players may not exist. Okay. So that is something that one need to look at. So we need to have not only the vendor base, but we need to have a strong ranking mechanism, strong training mechanisms for these vendors so as to ensure the management of the quality. The second issue, I think everybody talked about, the intended beneficiary may not benefit. That is, the scheme has been designed for the economically backward section, especially through CFA. However, many states have got the concessional power of free power. So in the initial period of the scheme, the beneficiaries are going to be the large residential consumers, group housing societies, and resident welfare associations. So these are going to be the consumers who will be essentially participating in the scheme and not necessarily economically backward category consumers. If intention is to ensure that only these consumers get, then probably we need a different design of the scheme and to be put in place at the time of actual implementation. The third issue, it was alluded to in terms of the DCR panels, or non-availability or expensive. I will give actual numbers over here. The scheme is designed to promote domestically manufactured cells and panels. But since the announcement of the scheme, domestic manufacturers have actually increased the prices significantly. And difference today between the DCR and non-DCR panels is 9,000 rupees or more per kilowatt basis. We have been advising some of the entities to procure DCR panels, and the difference is significant. The difference in the panel itself is more than 6,000 rupees. And if we take into consideration the PLI benefits which these manufacturers are actually getting, I think there is something to MNRE need to look at it, how to ensure this DCR panels are available at a cheaper cost to the consumers, and the subsidy is not appropriated by the beneficiary who's not intended to be the beneficiary of the scheme. Regulatory frameworks, I think the entire scheme is designed on the fundamental principle that net metering will be allowed for the residential category. Some regulatory commissions don't allow. Valli Madam also talked about it, but I think that is where the MNRE, MOP have to come in strongly and ensure or insist that the regulatory commissions implement a net metering scheme. Should not implement charges with retrospective effect. There have been some instances where the attempt is being made to either levy grid support charges by whatever name you may call it, but essentially the grid support charges which would create a kind of additional stream of revenue for the distribution companies. The third issue is price for procurement of excess injection. See, many a times the consumers insist on very high price on the excess injection. And that should not be the case because that harms the distribution company in multiple ways. However, the excess injection should be controlled. One of the way the scheme could use the net metering and reduction in excess injection so as to balance the interest of both the distribution company and consumer is that consumer should size the system to the extent of the 90% of the average last 12 months consumption. That will ensure that there is not so significant excess injection and distribution company doesn't suffer. RESCO model implementation, many many ACRCs don't allow RESCO, and in some cases, even if the ACRC allows RESCO, distribution company doesn't allow RESCO to get implemented. And the second issue is the levy of different charges. There have been instances, not only cross-subsidy surcharge, additional surcharge, in one particular ACRC, open access charges are also proposed to be levied on the RESCO model. Now, how do we really, in such a situation, how do we really expect RESCOs to work? So what probably needs to happen is that a separate guidelines for the implementation of RESCO model, either in the form of a rule, need to be brought in by Government of India. So the customer perspective, I have already talked about the grid support charges. In some states, the charge is as 1.5 rupees per unit, and the RTS systems can't be made viable in such a high charge of grid support charges. In fact, the government should make it kind of a part of this either RDSS MOU or a part of the rule saying that the state will not levy any such charges on the systems that have come or that are coming under this particular mechanism or this particular scheme. The second issue, not talked about a lot, but it is actually going to impinge on the long-term viability of these systems. You know, generally the modules are available in the market with 20-25 years of generation warranty. However, inverters that are being offered in the market, especially for the small size inverters, 1 to 5 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt inverters, the warranty period is just 6 to 8 years. A lot of these inverters are going to fail within 10 years of installation. All the calculation of the subsidy, societal benefit, consumer benefit, return on equity for the consumer are based on the assumption that the system would survive through 25 years period. As soon as the system, if it fails after 10 years and the consumer doesn't replace the inverter, which may happen, okay, there is really an issue. One solution for this could be the scheme could mandate the use of inverters with a longer warranty period, at least 10 years, 12 years kind of a warranty period. That would, of course, increase the price of the system, but I think it's worth paying that little extra price for the system than actually losing the benefit. The third issue from the consumer perspective, viability of the TOD tariffs. So the Ministry of Power rule states that during the solar period, the tariff should be 20% lower than the normal tariff for that category of consumer. A lot of these consumers may not come, in the sense if we really go for 3 kilowatt, 5 kilowatt system, it's going to take a long time for TOD tariff to get implemented for them. But for the higher end residential category consumers, group housing societies, which would be the initial beneficiary of that, as soon as we do that, the TOD tariff, there would be a challenge in terms of the viability. Also, the second challenge is that whenever there is a TOD tariff, how do you really do the net metering? Would you allow the consumer to set off? In fact, this issue comes up in C&I category rooftop systems also. So as soon as the TOD tariff is implemented, the regulatory commissions, distribution companies don't want the solar energy to be set off during the evening period. And if that happens, all the systems their viability would come under stress. So there has to be a clarity in terms of the TOD tariffs, application of the TOD tariffs for the systems that would come under this particular scheme, so as to ensure that we maximize the benefit that we are expected to from this from the kind of outlay that we have. Maintenance of the systems, I think 20-25 years, even say 10 kilowatt systems, if there are 40 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt plus systems, I think the owners would be really aware and cognizant about the need to do the maintenance. But if the systems are 3 kilowatt, 5 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt, I think the maintenance of the systems would be a challenge. It may not happen after the initial period. So some kind of active involvement of some agency, most likely most suitable agencies, DISCOM, would be necessary. MNRE may come up with some kind of a scheme so as to encourage DISCOM to track the generation from these systems, some kind of a warning system may be issued. Rooftop versus ground mounted, currently the scheme allows only on the rooftops, but maybe ground mounted solar panels in the vicinity. Essentially what we are talking about is not, don't restrict rooftop to just rooftop, make it behind the meter or the consumer side of the meter. The last issue, I think this is very crucial from the scheme design point of view, as well as consumer as well as DISCOM point of view. See, the inverters which are supplied for this category of consumers, and their what I would say certification that exists, even if the grid supply is stripped. See, there is a fire in the prosumer during the daytime at a prosumer premises. Even if the grid supply is stripped, the system remains live, and this is a very serious hazard, safety hazard. If it is a 5 kilowatt system, the DC voltage on the two ends of the panels could be as high as a 500 volt DC. And the fire people, consumers trying to switch off the fire or trying to douse the fire would have a serious safety hazard. So there are not much can be done about it, but prosumers, distribution company, fire departments will have to be educated on this particular issue. Last, I think, 2 slides. DISCOM perspective, readiness of the grid infrastructure at LT level. See, a lot of this, the 30 gigawatt capacity is going to come up at either 440 volt 3-phase DC, 3-phase, or 220 volt single phase. While one would say, yeah, that's okay, but we don't have currently the grid which is ready for this kind of a overwhelming capacity coming up at such a low LT voltage levels. Especially the 220 volt single phase is going to create additional problem of imbalance, because typically the voltage, the load is dispersed around 3 phases so as to be it is similar, so that there is no voltage phase imbalance. But the systems are going to create a little bit of a challenge, because now the load point of view, the phase imbalance will have, or the load would be different, and the generation time, the load would be different. And there would be reverse power flow or the two-way bidirectional power flow on the system. So a lot of investments in the grid upgrades, advanced management strategies, along with the continuous monitoring is something that would be required, and that should be formed part of the strategy for the implementation. Cost implications for DISCOM, I think Alok Kumar sir already talked about it. Solar energy will be injected during the daytime, and we have already started seeing the prices dipping during the daytime. And DISCOM will have to purchase very expensive power during the evening period. Even if the TOD tariff is implemented, the peak surcharge of 10% may not be sufficient for this. So probably what we need is that some kind of a mechanism, not necessarily immediately today, but certainly tomorrow, wherein the battery systems are encouraged to be installed along with the rooftop solar, so as to have the balance in terms of the solar generation and utilization during evening period. One of the issue is the smart and prepayment meters. MOP has mandated installation of the smart prepaid meters. It's a little unclear to me, at least, how will the net metering would get integrated into homes with the smart prepaid meters. So it appears to me that we are working with the two divergent strategies, one with the smart prepayment meter and another with the net metering for the economically backward section. One or two just issues. What we have seen in the last several years, the rooftop systems have really taken off in a few states, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka. So what we really need is that a balanced approach to ensure that the rooftop systems are implemented across the country. This is not going to be easy, because the rooftop systems, the viability depends on the consumer tariff, and the consumer tariffs vary significantly for the residential category. RESCO model has got huge implementation challenges, starting with the legal sanctity of the model itself, and then the charges, and then the which regulators' different view. I have already spoken about it. The last point is, while there is a mention about environmental standards to be mentioned or adhered to by the vendors, I think we need more than just mention of that. We also need to have some very proper policy about the disposal of solar waste. MOEFCC has already come out with something, but that need to be integrated into the vendor management system so as to ensure that it is implementable. So that was the last slide of my presentation. I will stop over here. Once again, thank you, IEF, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Balwan Joshi. Very nicely putting up all the issues in execution and operation maintenance, regulatory issues, technical issues, safety, almost everything you have covered in your presentation and given your valuable suggestions. I think most of the questions raised to me by the participants have been answered. But if there are any other questions or any other comments, we would welcome anyone who wants to raise any question.
Anil Razdan here.
Razdan sir, please.
I think it's been an excellent morning. Very practical, people down to earth, implementers and policymakers combined, and the financier also. I'm so glad that candidly everything has been put across. I would only say that from past experience that obviously this scheme has been drawn up in a hurry without due consultation of all the stakeholders in the project, and almost like launching an aircraft without going through all the safety procedures. But yes, it is very laudable. The scheme is very laudable. But since it handles the distribution segment, which is the vast segment of the stakeholders, the problems are even greater. And it's across the whole spectrum of the country, where each state has a different perspective. Maybe a few you can cluster together. So the point at issue really is for the lenders, and I think the Ministry of Non-Conventional Energy or Renewable Energy Resources. And they will, I think, be well advised to sit with the Finance Ministry and really go through a process of robust consultations before launching this very significant scheme onto the public. The whole issues of the regulatory commissions, their role, metering, what time the DISCOM is to supply, whether it supplies more expensive power, all these issues. And I think all our speakers today have given us very invaluable insights, right from Vali to Alok, who's always been very practical and very incisive as usual. And Mr. Balwan Joshi also, I think, has been extremely precise in bringing out the diverse issues. I think we will need one or two more detailed days. Maybe if the India Energy Forum can organize one whole day event on this very important subject, where the policymakers can also come and participate so that they can take these inputs. But all said and done, I see that a revision of the scheme may be in order once the polls are over and all the stakeholders' opinions have been taken into account, including the financing agencies. Thank you so much for this excellent morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Razdan Saab. Alok ji, you want to say something?
Yeah, just one intervention. This issue of TOD tariff 10% and the peaking power. I would like to mention the rules say minimum, say discount of 20%, minimum 10%. So regulators will have to sit down and see the state situation. TOD tariffs are not in conflict with rooftop solar because TOD tariffs will also avoid and reduce the peak power purchase requirement. I feel if the regulator has a clear understanding of all the facts of a discom, one can design a TOD tariff which is compliant with the rules and also can support the overall cost containment of for the discom and sufficient incentive for the rooftop solar owner. Thank you.
Thank you. Ajay Shankarji, you want to say something?
I entirely agree with Mr. Razdan's sensible advice that this is at an early stage and events like this would help government create a design which would be much better and would get implemented more successfully. 3 points for consideration. Number one, I strongly endorse what Mr. Alok Kumar said, that you have to go in for gross metering. Without that, the program will face serious difficulties in actually getting acceptance. Now, the moment you go in for gross metering for this category, it is time to revisit the issue of net metering, because why should I, as a consumer paying 8 rupees a unit, get for my solar power 8 rupees, and the beneficiary in this scheme getting 4 rupees or 4.5 rupees a unit? This is not sustainable. So I think it's time we revisited the gross metering, net metering issue. Second, Mr. Alok Kumar is absolutely right. Till there is a 15-year settled price at which the excess solar power will be paid, the scheme will not take off. Now, 2 new points that I want to bring in. One is we have an excellent experience of the LED promotion program, where bulk procurement gave us enormous fall in prices. So we are going to procure 1 crore panels. So why not consider buying it in bulk, create a few major producers, and have a much lower price? And the advantage in this program is, or the importance of this in this program is more than in the LED program, because government subsidies are involved. So if the price becomes half, the subsidy becomes half. So I would strongly urge bulk procurement and local vendors who take the equipment that is given, put it on the rooftop and service it and implement the performance guarantee. The third suggestion following from the idea of bulk procurement is that you can insist that all the cells and modules will be made in India for this round, and say that the next round we will want the entire value chain in India, because the volume of procurement is such that the full value chain can be installed in India with this assured market. And I do not see the program ending at 1 crore. 1 crore is what was announced. Once it's successfully implemented, the larger political social forces will drive us into scaling up the program the way village electrification of Saubhag was scaled up. And related to that is the point that it needs a narrower focus to whoever you describe as weaker sections or BPL households or whatever, because the subsidies should go to those who deserve it, and it should be therefore very narrowly defined. And final point, this will not work without the partnership of the state governments and the discoms. So they have to be made genuine partners in the implementation of the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anil Razdan here, sir. I entirely agree with Ajay. And I feel that we should have no regrets in going back to the drawing board and bringing up a robust scheme after more extensive and intensive consultation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Razdan Saab. And I think we had very extensive discussion on the scheme. A lot of good suggestions have come up. We'll compile all the suggestions and pass on to the Ministry of Renewable Energy and also Ministry of Power. May I now request Mr. BP Singh to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Rakesh sir. Today's webinar has been really an educative and timely when we are entering into the implementation of the scheme. And I have the privilege of passing on the vote of thanks So let me at the outset thank Shri Rakesh Nath ji for organizing this webinar to the forum of India Energy Forum. He had circulated a background note which actually highlighted all the issues which need to be deliberated and which are of concern. So I am greatly thankful to you, sir, for putting that background note and conducting the webinar very nicely. I'm also thankful to Shri R.V. Saisa, President Indian Energy Forum, who had also given a historical background of solar rooftop and basically highlighted how its development has taken place and what else needs to be done for the period. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks to the speakers, Ms. Wali Natarajan, who had actually underlined all the issues which are involved and how they intend to implement the scheme and the problems which they are, challenges which they are going to face, and they are working on it, and the program which they are trying. She had said basically after the election, probably after the model code, they will speed up the pace of implementation and actually having the vendor penetration and registration and implementation of scheme. So thanks, ma'am. Next in the speaker was Surya. Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable inputs. So at the outset, he gave the perspective of what is in the world scenario implementation of rooftop solar and how we stand with respect to that. And he also gave a special example of Taiwan, where there is an implementation of about 63%, where this is a multi-story building, and you highlighted that even the multi-story building, the rooftop level, there could be different models of implementing and actually achieving higher targets than what we have been aiming at. We also underlined the role of regulatory framework which needs to be worked out, and how to make the adjustment for free power which the vendor, which the actually beneficiaries are getting today, and how that adjustments are made, and the credit stability of this rooftop solar over a longer duration for its sustainability and visibility. And this will also have challenges which we highlighted. So thank you very much, sir, for a detailed discussion and deliberation on that. The next in the speaker was Mr. Balwant Rai. He very ably highlighted the consumer perspective and raised many issues, including the regulatory framework, of RESCO model, then between warranty panels between our he also the implementation of these. So thank you very much, sir, for detailed discussion on the subject. Then we had a question answer session, and there was active participation for Shri Alavadi, who raised the question. Then Mr. Anil Adval, Mr. Ajay Shankar, and I again thank all the participants, all the speakers once again. Today we had a strength of almost 65 people which attended the seminar. Thank you everyone once and all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.